Okay, we're on for The Color Out of Space.
Hey guys, welcome back. This is Emily.
I'm Greg.
And today we are going to be reviewing The Color Out of Space. It's
Yes.
a Lovecraft story. So one of the things I like about Lovecraft is that he kind of relates everything within the same universe for the most part. I have yet to read a story by him that doesn't mention the Miskatonic University or Arkham or anything like that. So this one in particular, though, is a little different than some of his other ones where they're very real monsters. This one is a very ambiguous monster, if we can even call it that. So,
yeah, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just this thing that
an aura
happened to get trapped on Earth and is trying to get back to its natural element. We don't really know. That's not explained too well.
It's this is a very, very kind of low key monster, if it is even a monster at that. So
I think that's what makes a story so powerful is the fact that
you have this big unknown.
It isn't spelled out. It is mysterious. Lovecraft just goes a certain distance with the explanations, and then he stops and leaves a lot to your imagination, which is really great. I love that.
So the reason we actually decided to read, or at least that I decided to read this story, because I had never read it before, was Greg had invited us over to watch The Color of Space film starring Nicolas Cage. And I actually enjoyed that. For a sci-fi film, that was a pretty interesting, fun, good combination of humor and very normal, everyday family stuff. Very typical Nicolas Cage, being real intense in some moments and very out there. I really enjoyed it a lot, actually. And he was like, "You should read the story. How have you not read this story?" So I decided to read it. So our synopsis of the story is this guy is going to test water and do surveying for a reservoir that's going to be built in this particular valley of this community. And when he's surveying, he encounters this one spot where nothing's grows. There's ash everywhere, and all there is an old fireplace and chimney just left, and there's nothing else. No fields, nothing. Just the whole area is this gray dust and this chimney. And he's like, "That's weird." And he got a really bad feeling while he was there. So when he approached the community, which is full of very podunk, not super intelligent, but agricultural-based people with very interesting dialect, as written, and they kind of say, "Oh yeah, we don't talk about that. But there's this old farmer off yonder who might be willing to tell you something if you catch him on a good day. If you're super curious, but we really just don't want to talk about it." So he's, of course, more intrigued and goes and finds this farmer, and the farmer sits him down and kind of recounts this tale of one day a meteor hits his neighbor's farm and just kind of lands there, and it's kind of does some weird stuff, and they're poking at it, and it breaks open, and this weird color, that color they've never seen, kind of pops out of this thing, and then the next day it's gone. All of it's gone. So they're like, "Okay, well, that was weird." But they kind of just, life goes on as normal because they're just farmers. They're like, we're not super worried about it. Got in the newspaper, but no big deal kind of thing. But then suddenly vegetation starts growing, and it's in this really weird color that's unlike any color you've ever seen. But all of it's useless and very alien looking. The trees move on their own when there's no wind, and it just kind of starts doing all this weird stuff. So the farmer just kind of is trying to keep his cows away from it and, just try not to eat it. And none of it's edible, really. And then one day, his cows just start crumbling apart. They just start, drying up and withering and then becoming dust. And everything around him starts doing this. And so his neighbor is, super concerned because he hadn't seen this farmer for a while, and he goes over to his house, and the guy's just crumbling to pieces, and kind of reiterates to him it was just a color. There was a color in the meteor, and it's in the well, and it's poisoning everything, and then he just falls apart. And then suddenly, like, the whole area explodes with this giant, colorful ray of light that goes back into space, and the guy's just freaking out, and he has a police officer who shows up, and the horses are all, like, sucked into the vortex and turned to dust and die, and everything just freaky as crap, like, starts happening. And he's like, yeah, something's trying to get back home here, like, crumbling dead neighbors now, was right. Something was really wrong from that asteroid or meteor, whatever fell here. But they're like, all they see are like these little glimpses of this color or this color aura that's just kind of flitting around. And so they all just flee. And then eventually the entire farm just looks like it goes up in flames, but it's worse than that. It's that weird, eerie color, and then there's this beam of light that goes to space, and the whole place just implodes and turns to dust. And that's all that's remained there, and nobody goes around it. Mm-hmm. And the guy from the Miskatonic University who's serving is like, oh, I'm never drinking the water again from around here, ever. Because he's concerned that the color's still there, kind of creeping, and it's still in the ground and doing weird stuff to it. So yeah, you kind of get, literally the line is like, what could we do? It was just a color out of space. And that's where the whole title comes from. So it was just a really interesting and kind of ambiguous. I liked that, one, it's literally just a color. Like, I think that's such a unique and interesting way of portraying an enemy, so to speak, but it doesn't behave like it's an enemy. It just behaves like it's trying to make something familiar with where it is right now. Yeah. So it's not really something that they could fight. It's kind of like a virus, or, there's nothing you can really do to fight it if you don't know enough about it. And it's just going to do its thing and run its course. Yeah. And you just have to suffer the consequences. So I thought that was a really well done piece. I liked it a lot.
I thought it was brilliant. I read this years ago when I first read Lovecraft, in my first book from Arkham House, the Dunwich Horror and others. And this story blew me away. It's absolutely brilliant. It is technically part of the Cthulhu mythos, but Cthulhu isn't in it. The elder gods aren't in it. A lot of the typical trappings of Cthulhu stories are missing from this. You do get that character, he's working with Arkham University, but that's about as much of the mythos as really brought in. This entity is something else, something different, a new aspect of the whole mythology. And it is a very different kind of creature. It's a truly alien life form from anything we have here on Earth. Very different from any kind of alien here on Earth. So it's brilliantly imagined, brilliantly told, of course, in Lovecraft's typical style. I've always felt that there is kind of like a kin between this story and The Fall of the House of Usher. It's like, we know Lovecraft was influenced heavily by Poe. We know he would have read and known Fall of the House of Usher. It's like he read that story and then thought, well, okay, but what's really causing it? And then came up with his own idea of explaining with this whole thing from space and the well that's poisoning the land and the people. So I feel there is a strong connection between the two stories, and I think it's good if you're interested to read both of them. I went back for this. I reread Color Out of Space, and then went back and reread The Fall of the House of Usher, just to kind of compare and contrast. And yeah, they're very different stories, but they have that similar basic theme. Which is a very Gothic theme, by the way. It goes all the way back to the beginnings of Gothic. Fall of the House of Usher was influenced in part by the Castle of Otranto, which is considered to be the very first Gothic story, the one that started the whole genre. Yeah. And so I'm going back and reading that one too, because I've never read Castle of Otranto myself.
I haven't either. We might have to do a video on that or something.
We'll do that in the near future.
One of the things I appreciate about this too is that you have a very specific plot of land that's kind of being affected but not haunted. Usually you think like, oh, it's a haunting because there's this, you know, you get like things like, I don't know, the Amityville Horror, it's haunted because it's on that Indian burial ground or whatever, you know, crap. Or like the Winchester house where it's haunted. It's a haunted property because it was from the Winchesters who developed the guns or what, you know, and killed a lot of people. So it's haunted by all the souls of who were killed by, you know. But this is so not a haunting. Like this is an alien. Definitely an alien that's come from space, even though it has no physical body. That's another thing I appreciated too. This isn't a humanoid alien at all. It's not even biological as far as we can tell. Like we have no frame of reference for it has no body. It's just a color. We can't even tell if it's a gas. It just is an aura of this color floating around. So I just thought that was really interesting to have something that's not a haunting, that's affecting a very particular plot of land and plaguing a very particular family. And like the way that they chose to go, like that Lovecraft chose to go about making it that way. How it's just so unique. I think I would have expected this to be, you know, at post 2000 kind of science fiction thing. Not from, you know, the 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever, you know, era, whenever it was written. I would not have expected.
1930s.
Yeah, 1930s. That's what I figured. But, you know, I just don't expect that kind of thing to come out of that era. I would expect that to be more of a now. So it just shows, like, how before his time Lovecraft really was. And how much dedication he put into his work to make something that was so abnormal and so terrifying because it's so ambiguous and you can't fight it. So I just thought that was so well done.
Yeah.
Plus it's a color. I want to know what it looks like.
Which is a problem for filmmakers. This has been made in various levels into a number of films. And of course, as a filmmaker, how do you show a color that is not any of the familiar colors of the spectrum, yet can still be seen? And that's the dilemma Lovecraft posed for anybody trying to illustrate or film this movie, is that there is no way. It's totally outside of our experience. We don't have a pigment for this. It's a very, very strange thing. So filmmakers have done their best with this story. I think the Nicolas Cage film is probably the best version yet. Even though it does not stick really close to the story. It does vary from the story in a lot of ways.
They did have to, but I saw why. After having read the short story, things just crumbling to dust is a little boring.
Yeah.
Because you're just watching things crumble over time.
Right.
They had to make it a little more exciting, and I think the way they chose to take artistic license for this was very well done. And
of course, people go to see Nicolas Cage being Nicolas Cage. And so
well,
they have to include that.
I don't think Nicolas Cage, I feel the same way about Samuel L. Jackson. I don't think he's actually acted a day in his life. I think he's actually just been said, be yourself. But this is going on around you. Go.
Well,
literally.
Yes and no. I mean, the traditional Hollywood system would forge these personas for actors. Like Cary Grant always played Cary Grant. Now, Cary Grant was a completely fictional construct made by what was his original name? Archibald Leach or something like that. And you know, people would ask him about that, and he said he would like to meet Cary Grant too. You know, and this was a totally made up persona that he made up for films. Another brilliant actor character like that is Goldie Hawn. Now, I think Goldie Hawn is her name, but she always played this same character. No matter how different the movie might be, Goldie Hawn was always Goldie Hawn, but Goldie Hawn was always brilliant at that one character. And Nicolas Cage kind of falls into that same mold where he has this persona and it sells movies, and so he keeps doing the same persona movie after movie.
He's almost the perfect everyman when you think about it. Like, he's just a very relatable guy in all of the things that he's in. Even like his really extreme ones, like National Treasure, steal the Declaration of Independence. That's the kind of shit I would say if I was just for shock value. I don't know that I'd actually steal the Declaration of Independence, but like, it's still a remarkably relatable character.
Yeah, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, like The Wicker Man.
What can you do?
In this movie, in the movie The Color Out of Space, it worked really well. Although it is not exactly Lovecraft's story. It is updated, it is Hollywoodized, but it's a fun movie. It's a great movie.
And the locations are still the same. It's just not, it's not a period film where it's actually in the 1930s or anything. It's very modern day, but you still get Arkham mentioned. You still get Miskatonic University mentioned. So, you know, there's these allusions to the original story, but yes, there's a lot of artistic license. If I had to compare and contrast, though, I do think they really did a nice job with the film. And then I also really enjoyed the story. So if you like sci-fi and you're okay with, I kind of call this a pretty well done B film. Kind of. Like, I wouldn't.
Think it's a little better than that.
Yeah, that's why I say really well done B film. Like,
okay.
Because it's not quite a B film, but it has those kind of like funny, hokey moments that you expect of a B film, where you're just kind of like the old monster movies where you're like, yeah, you have one of those moments kind of thing. But a few of those. But I just think it was well done. And the effects makeup was really good.
So there were some movies done before this that are either closely or loosely based on The Color Out of Space. The first one, I think, was The Blob, which she had never seen.
I hadn't.
So
I finally
Joe
saw
corrected
it.
that.
Yeah, my husband.
She's seen The Blob finally. And I mean, what's not to love about a movie about a meteor that crashes to Earth and this jelly rolls out of it and starts eating people? Brilliant.
It was pretty great.
But there are a lot of similarities between. The Blob is not really a movie of The Color Out of Space, of course, because it's a blob, not a color. And it doesn't confine itself to one farm. It goes and terrorizes the whole town. So a lot of differences, but you can see where, you know, you have this thing coming down from space and it releases this monster and all the people are being killed by it. Kind of a very similar theme to Color Out of Space. And I think it's likely that the people who made The Blob were familiar with Lovecraft's story. And so they were looking to make something really funny and campy and poking fun at the 1950s sci-fi movies and something that would go over well at the drive-in. And so The Blob, as great a classic as it is a B drive-in movie. It's not something you can take seriously.
No, I found myself being like, what? A lot.
It's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious. And it's Steve McQueen's first starring role. So
that actually
it's a movie. Yeah, that was his first movie. And so that's a movie to see. Later on, that was done in the late 50s. Later on in the late 1960s, the movie was made starring Boris Karloff as Die Monster Die, the story, I mean, The Color Out of Space. Now, this one did specifically take The Color Out of Space and try to make it into a movie, but this one made a lot of changes. It was a low-budget horror film. It's very different from the movie, very different from the story, but it's a good movie because it has Boris Karloff in it.
That's the only redeeming quality.
Yeah, I've always liked it for that reason. I've always loved Boris Karloff, and I've always liked that movie.
I feel like he and Vincent Price are the kind of people where you can put them in the hokiest situation and you can't help but take them seriously.
Yeah.
Like, they're just really good.
They can take a bad movie and make it watchable just like
because
they're in it.
Commanding presence. Like, I felt that with the Tingler with particularly with Vincent Price. Like,
Yeah.
this is a bizarre movie. It should be laughable, but it isn't
Right.
because of Vincent Price. I feel the same way, though, with Boris Karloff.
I feel that way about The Last Man on Earth, which is based on I Am Legend.
Mhm.
I Am Legend is a great book. I really love the movie that was made of it more recently with, what's his name?
Will Smith.
Will Smith.
There you go.
The original movie was with Vincent Price, and the only thing good about that movie is Vincent Price. Otherwise, the vampire people, which at that time nobody called them zombies, because what we call zombies today aren't really zombies. Zombies are a specific thing in voodoo that deals with a drug and mind control and stuff. The zombies we have that go around eating brains, that really comes from the vampires of I Am Legend, which were then called zombies when memory is failing me. Night of the Living Dead was made kind of remaking Last Man on Earth without Vincent Price. And they call them zombies there. And that's where our today's zombies come from. And I've never liked that. I've always thought, they walk really slow and they're dead. So
too easy to make dead again.
How are these a threat? Just, get a bazooka and blow them all away.
Yeah.
Problem solved.
Run them over with a combine. That's my zombie apocalypse plan.
Exactly. They're not.
Borrow combine and take them out.
Those zombies aren't dangerous at all. There's a movie in the 40s. Oh, now I can't remember the name. I Walked with a Zombie or something like that. That really uses the voodoo zombies, and that is a zombie movie. That's the one to watch if you want a zombie movie. That was a good movie. But anyway, getting back to The Color Out of Space, there's one more that I've seen that was based. It was made not too long ago, but it's a foreign film. I saw it on Amazon Prime, and it follows the story almost exactly, except that it's set, I believe, in Germany.
Oh, okay.
And it's in German with subtitles, so you got to deal with reading subtitles. But it followed the story a lot closer, almost to the letter. And
okay.
I would say it would be a great movie version of Color Out of Space, except for the fact that you have to read it unless you know German. That's its one weakness. Otherwise, it was a pretty darn good movie.
Okay. Because I thought, having read the story now, like just watching things crumble over time would be kind of boring.
Well, this movie wasn't boring.
That's
but it wasn't as thrilling as the Nicolas Cage Color Out of Space. And so I think as a movie, I think the Nicolas Cage version takes the top as the best version of Color Out of Space.
I liked the graphics in there too. They did a really great job in Nicolas Cage version.
Yeah.
With the graphics, and like they used this very unique fuchsia magenta kind of color for the color, which I think was really unique. You usually don't think of bright pink as threatening, but they made it work really well.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's that dilemma. How do you portray a color that nobody has ever seen before?
I felt like I read an article once too that magenta is kind of unusual as a color.
Okay.
And I can't remember what it was. It's like the way we perceive the spectrum of magenta makes it a very like alien seeming color or something like that.
Okay.
So I thought the use of it, I wish I could remember what that article was and what it said specifically, but like that clicked in my brain when we were watching it. And I saw the magenta fuchsia kind of color being used. I was like, oh, I can see where the rationale for that is because of that article I had read of magenta being such an unusual and weird color for the human eye spectrum to perceive. So that kind of made better sense to me. But yeah, I felt like they did a really nice job.
Yeah, and I think this illustrates really well when you stick too close to the story. Sometimes it just doesn't translate that greatly to film. Another good example of that is The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. There was a British director that made a version that came out at the same time as Steven Spielberg's War of the Worlds, but it's a horrible movie, but it's accurate to the book. I didn't sit through the whole thing because it's such a badly done movie. But what I watched of it was accurate to Wells's book, and it just wasn't as good a movie. It wasn't. It was, like you said, it was dull.
Yeah.
The book is not dull, but watching the book, trying to watch the book made into a movie accurately and faithfully, it just didn't come across very well. So when you go to that other medium, you have to write for that medium. You have to make certain changes so that it works well in that medium. You can do things in a book that you just can't do on film.
Yeah, and you do have to rely on the reader's imagination a lot. And so, like, when you write something, you can just suggest mildly, and the human mind will take it to a whole other level. Whereas if you try to do that mild suggestion in film, it doesn't always translate because you're literally seeing it. So your eyes, what your eyes and your brain are processing, can't make more with it. So you're almost handing them too much.
Yeah.
So you kind of, by handing them not enough. It's weird. But that's how it is.
So probably one of the best people for that is Stanley Kubrick. Well, and Alfred Hitchcock. They both knew how to take a book and turn it into a movie in a way that made a great movie. And yeah, okay, the people that loved the book hate the movie because it's not the book. Well, it's not a book, it's a movie.
Yeah.
And those directors understood what they needed to do to make a great movie, and they did.
And I felt that way too, like with Lord of the Rings. Like the way that the whole, like, Peter Jackson doing Aragorn, having like that inner conflict about being king, that's not in the book at all.
Yeah.
Because he knows he's king. He knows he's supposed to be king. He's just going through the journey to get to where he needs to be to become king.
Right.
But that would be really boring. You would think he was a cocky asshole throughout the whole movie if they had done it that way. Having him have that inner conflict, though, makes him a more relatable character.
Yeah.
Whereas the focus of that book was the journey, not necessarily the character of Aragorn, but in the films, they made the characters a little bit more of a feature instead of, you know, the journey and what they were trying to accomplish. So it's the same thing. Sometimes it just doesn't work.
Yep. So Color Out of Space then is definitely one of the greatest. It's on our list, best of all time.
And I can recommend the movie too. It was pretty fun.
The most recent movie was really well done and is very good. Worth your time watching.
Yeah, if you like sci-fi stuff, it's right up your alley. Really nicely done. And then, of course, read the story too, so you have the background. We always encourage that because you can make better assessments about what you prefer, and then you can make better assessments on why the I guess directors did what they did. So you have a more holistic view. Yeah. And it's a quick read. It's not...
Oh, yeah. It's a short story.
Yeah, it's very short. I shouldn't say very short, but it's short enough.
It's a decent length. Yeah. I forget exactly how many pages.
Mine, I think, was a 10-page.
Okay.
Front and back.
Yeah.
So like 20 page, I guess.
Yeah. So it's not super long, but it's not an extremely short story like Frederick Brown's Knock.
And the narrator has a really nice, unique storytelling voice because he's a man of science who's talking to a man who is not of science. And he's making a lot of conclusions and things like that based off of what he understands the guy's saying and what he experienced. It's really nice. It's really nicely done. And it's nice because the narrator is not condescending to the very hardly literate farmer. At no point does he say anything pertaining to degradation towards this character, which I appreciated. Because, like, hill folk are just hill folk, man. Like, let them be. There's nothing wrong with what they're doing in their lifestyle. So I appreciated that he wasn't condescending about that. So the narration is well done as well. Very respectful. So yeah, it's a good one.
Oh yeah. So go read it. Go read more Lovecraft. You go read more Lovecraft.
I am. I'm amazed at how much I have read, and I just forgot that it was Lovecraft in the first place. So I'm getting there. I'm getting through that. So,
and we'll probably do more Lovecraft in the future on these videos.
For sure. So, of course, follow, like, subscribe, comment. Let us know what you thought of the book or the film Color Out of Space, any of them that we've discussed. And we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.